Hi, welcome to another episode of the F1GridView. Today we'll be reviewing the Montreal Canadian Grand Prix. Mika, first thoughts.
It was pretty good. I mean, there were a lot of things happening with the penalties, drivers starting from behind,
Correct.
a few drivers in the beginning fighting for the first position right from the first lap, which of course didn't happen, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was nice.
Everybody was looking forward to the Fernando Alonso dive bomb into turn one and getting ahead of Max, but
Yeah.
Max got a really good start and I think he just breezed past.
His start was brilliant. I
Yeah.
really loved it.
So he just got a fantastic start and he just breezed past and there was no coming back. So yeah, let's start from the beginning. Uh, what did you think of who was your favorite driver of the race?
Driver of the race, I would say Max. I mean, he did a pretty good job.
That's true.
Even in the last 20 laps after the safety car, when there was a very good possibility of, Sainz being able to overtake, there were quite a few chances that he could have even overtaken, but
Yeah.
he still managed to keep him behind.
Yeah. Something else I really was found interesting was this was Fernando Alonso's first time on the front row since the 2012 German Grand Prix.
Yeah.
And he did that time also coincidentally come P2 after Sebastian Vettel, who was the reigning champion in the Red Bull, came P1. So a nice bit of deja vu for him. But yeah, that's a long time, like 10 years gap between his last podium qualifying finishes.
He also managed to get more than 2,000 points.
Oh yes, that is
2,002 now.
yeah. But like speaking of Alonso, also like it was a good race for him. No, the race was actually not very good. He got stuck behind
Yeah.
Ocon for a while. Also received a 5-second penalty and one penalty point for weaving on the straights. That got him down to P9 behind Bottas and Yang Zhu. So yeah, that left a little bit of a bad taste, I think. But but he actually had a pretty solid weekend.
His race wasn't that great, but his qualifying was really good.
Yeah, they have a really good qualifying pace, the Alpines. That's a really plus one they've got to McLaren, who've not been able to match them at all in straight line speeds. Uh, Speaking of qualifying, Red Bull had a huge advantage of getting their two cars in the top, with Charles taking out like a almost starting at the back of the grid because of his ICU and his engine issues, and taking new engines. The fourth one adding a fourth engine to the pool. They had a great chance, but the like Perez's engine also just gave up in Q2.
After Perez's engine gave up, I was like, till the end, I just didn't want Max's engine to give up because it was like such a good race. And if then it would have given up, it would have been heartbreaking for him.
Yeah. So Perez didn't do well in qualifying and also in the race. He had a really mediocre weekend. Carlos had a great weekend. He qualified P3, just behind his Spanish mentor in Fernando Alonso, but he had a good race. He had a solid race. He was, like he himself claimed, the fastest car on the track, but just the DRS and Max Verstappen taking his elbows out and defending with all his might in the last 10 laps. Those 15 laps after the safety car, it was just a mad dash to see who could be first and who could be second. But Max held on to it, and he did end up winning 6 races in a row for Red Bull, which has happened for the first time, I think, after 2013.
Sebastian Vettel, he
Sebastian
had
Vettel's
won 9 races in a row.
Yeah. Sebastian would just wake up and win races. Like that Red Bull and that Adrian Newey car was just another whole beast in itself. So, yeah. Something else I found really interesting was so Fernando's has had a really bad race weekends, I would say. So he's had 5 weekends that were impacted by severe power unit issues. Bahrain, he had engine issues. Saudi had engine issues. Australia, engine issues. Miami, they had a wrong strategy. Spain, they had a wrong strategy. Okay, Monaco was a clean weekend. Baku was a clean weekend. Again, he had engine issues here. So Fernando's putting in some really good races, but the engine is not holding up. And something I feel is really going to hurt them is they are in talks with Williams to give Oscar Piastri a seat there. And Mercedes wants to drop a customer team, and they are trying to get them a good deal on the Renault engines and get Piastri's seat. And like the issues they've had this year, if I was Williams, I don't know if I would be like 100% sure of the engines.
Yeah, I mean, that was just like right now because you don't know your engine is good enough, and then you're trying to give it to another team, and it's just crazy.
Yeah, but Mercedes do want to drop one customer team because it's not proving any, it's not doing them any financial benefit. So maybe if they are looking for somebody, like the Ferrari engine isn't doing that great either, and Red Bull is not going to give their powertrains to a third party customer. I don't think so as yet. And Ferrari has the most DNFs and the most issues this year in the engine. So their best bet would be Renault, who's at least consistently they've had a great straight line speed, both the Alpines. So maybe that's something they're looking at, which will help them. Something else that I was watching the post-race show after the post-race show, and Esteban Ocon said that they were just joking and they were talking about something going wrong in Magnussen's car ahead. And I think the Haas were also listening to his team radio and they made him pit. And Alonso and Ocon and his radio engineer were just laughing at how small the issue was, and they got Magnussen to pit and ruined his race completely. I feel at that point because it was too early to stop. And I mean, I won't say it was like something very badly done, but I mean, if you don't know what's wrong with your car and you make your driver pit, I don't think anybody else is to be blamed.
Yeah, it's like they were having a pretty good weekend, but then it all went downhill.
Yeah, like what a beautiful qualifying for both the Haas, and then P17 and a DNF. That's really not good. Something else I found really interesting was after this podium, Charles Leclerc has lesser podiums than Carlos Sainz in this year's season. Carlos has had more podiums than Charles. Yeah.
That's just sad.
Yeah. And that just shows how badly unreliable the Ferrari car has been.
I think the most beautiful thing that came out was the points gap.
Oh, yes. There are so many of these conspiracy theories also going around that how Perez was given a faulty engine and a car just so that Max would have a better lead.
I mean, see, we've had those since the time like Perez had a botched pit stop or whatever it is. At this point, we are blaming Red Bull because we know Perez is a really good driver and he can,
But not really. I was not very impressed with his free practice 1, 2, or 3. He's never actually done well on the Canadian track before. So maybe that.
Not this weekend.
Yeah, maybe that just could be.
That could be a reason for this weekend, but the previous weekends we have seen since the time he's gotten into the championship fight, he's not been having that great races.
That's true.
As you.
Yeah. So let's see how our qualifications panned out. We had some interesting results, interesting news before the qualifying that Yuki Tsunoda and Charles will both start from the back of the pack because they took the penalties. So they both just got on track to qualify for Sunday, not like qualify ahead. And Charles put in a good lap just so that he could start ahead of Yuki. So people out in Q3.
It wouldn't have made that big a difference for him because he did manage to
far superior car. Yeah, he was in a superior car. So so people who were out in Q1 were both the Aston Martins and Sebastian Vettel and Lance Stroll, the homeboy Canadian boy Nicolas Latifi as well, Yuki Tsunoda and Charles Leclerc. The most surprising thing was how strong Vettel was in free practice 3 that morning.
Yeah.
And just getting.
Really, looking forward to seeing him in the top 5.
Yeah, but the tires didn't get warm enough. I think Mike Rack, the team leader, the team director, blamed the tire pressure not being the right level, because of which both the cars did end up just getting out of Q1 itself. So the Q1 was a pretty.
I mean, even like they were blaming the temperatures of the track. Like FP3 was in rain, and at that time all both the Aston Martins had been performing really well, and FP3 was the same weather as FP1, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
And at that time also Aston Martin didn't do as good. So that's what they were blaming, that, if it would have been a wet quali, then they would have performed pretty good.
Yeah. So Q2, we had Valtteri Bottas, Alex Albon, Sergio Perez, Lando Norris getting out of this. Basically, and Pierre Gasly, sorry. Basically, Lando Norris had a PU issue, and Perez was, I think there was 6 minutes to go, and Perez was P7, and he just crashed out.
Yeah.
So then he was really easily overtaken, but both the Alphas. Sorry.
Bottas was outperformed by his teammate.
Yes, Bottas was, but like hardly by any seconds. But yeah, but he's been really good. I am really impressed by this young Chinese driver. It's just that he's not had this clean run and not made it to the finish line. But otherwise, he's been really good. So
yeah,
he's been impressed.
That's what I was seeing, like in the pre-race. The pre-race part where they were taking interviews and stuff, and that time I realized that he's been a pretty consistent driver. He's been pretty good. Like,
he's not been the regular pay drivers that we've seen, like as the likes of Mazepin or Latifi, but he's been actually really putting in some serious steps, and the car's not been very reliable. So obviously that's going to affect badly.
It's a Ferrari engine, so.
And Daniel Ricciardo made it to Q3. One small hope of shine for McLaren. They didn't make it there. The biggest loser tag or the biggest person to a gamble was George Russell, who put in softs and came out with 6 minutes to go. And it really was not weather for softs. Everybody was on inters at that point. And he was P3 when he put in softs, and he just came crashing down.
I think it was still drizzling at that point. So the track was a little wet.
Yeah.
And I don't think softs would have been a good choice.
Yeah,
which we saw it.
If he did like play the gamble well, he would have definitely finished on pole, because the timing differences.
This reminds me of Lando not hitting for.
Yes, Lando Russia last year. That was hurtful. That was for the race win. This he was just gambling to get pole. So yeah. So Fernando put in a fantastic final lap and got himself to P2. Carlos finished P3, Lewis P4, who had a great qualifying again. After the issues they had on Friday and the car looked undrivable, I thought they would finish P12, 13, 14. Yeah. And getting into P4 was fantastic. Both the Hasses outshone their car. They really drove out their skins to get to P5 and P6. It was mixed best ever qualifying. Esteban Ocon was P7. And a pole sitter was Max Verstappen. So yeah, a lot of people had issues and thoughts if Max could actually win this race, because Charles was not on pole, but he did end up winning the race with himself on pole.
Yeah, I mean, he's a world champion. You can't, think of all this now.
Especially with that car he's got, there is no way.
Engine might not be reliable, but the car is.
Even the engine might start getting more reliable, because they had issues in the start of the year.
It may not be reliable for Perez.
Yeah, they made might not be for Perez, but it will be for Max. His will make sure. So,
okay.
Yeah. Coming to our championship points, how we see our qualifying standings. Charles Leclerc still on P1. Like, he's done so well in qualifying. He's had 4 back-to-back poles, and like he obviously didn't get any points because he missed out completely. He's been really well. Something I really feel very interesting is Hulkenberg qualified above Latifi in the race. So like we made fun of Mazepin being 21st, the 21st driver in a race of 20 drivers. Latifi is going to do the same thing, and I really don't see him coming back next year or at all to F1 because of how Austria Piastri's rumors are going. So yeah, let's see how that goes.
And I mean, which is why everyone wanted to vote him as the driver of the day, which
in his home ground, this thing.
Yeah, they were like, might be a little bit of joy for
Yeah.
him.
Yeah, there were very strong rumors that he would be replaced mid-season also. That Piastri might start driving from Silverstone, but I don't think that is very likely. So
Yeah, I mean, there are no official news as well. Like, by this time, I think Silverstone news would be official.
yeah, and it is only 12 days to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's see how our race panned out. Like we spoke before, uh, Lewis and Russell were left to fight for themselves. I thought towards the end, but when they pit both of them together and they pit Hamilton before Russell, I thought that decision was very clear that did want Hamilton to win. Maybe it's just some boost in his just to boost his spirits or just to tell him sorry for how badly they've built a car, like how Toto complaining last week or a shit box he was driving and things like that. But I mean, what a comeback that is! Like from not being able to get out of your car because of the bouncing to finishing P3, I thought it was a fantastic job by Lewis and by Mercedes as well.
And like we've seen George, outshine him the whole season, like almost the whole season until now. And then seeing him up on the podium was just really good.
So the finishing lineup was Max Verstappen P1, Charles P2, followed by Lewis on the podium. Then George Carlos P2. Lewis finishing P3, the final podium place, followed by George Russell, Charles Leclerc, who came from P19 to P5, Esteban Ocon, who qualified behind his teammate, but did ended up finishing the race ahead of Alonso. This is actually not correct because after the penalty, Alonso did become P9 and Bottas finished P7, where Zhou finished P8 and Alonso P9. Lance Stroll in the final laps took away the single point that McLaren and Ricciardo were going to score by overtaking him, getting Lance his points at his home ground, at his home track. Daniel Ricciardo finishing P11, just out of the points, followed by Sebastian Vettel, Alex Albon, Pierre Gasly, Lando Norris, and Nicolas Latifi. Kevin Magnussen finishing P17. Three people who did not finish the race were Yuki Tsunoda, who crashed right after coming out from the pit lane. His tires were too cold, I feel, at that point, and he just went straight on. Mick Schumacher also, who had an engine issue, and Sergio Perez, who also had an engine issue. Charles took away the fastest lap. He was the fastest car. That DRS Carlos. I want Charles, but like it is Carlos. I'm sorry.
Not happening. It's just not happening, Harsh.
Yeah, I know. So Carlos finishing P2 and getting the fastest lap. He tried to overtake Max a couple of times, but it got a little close towards the end. Those last 10 laps were, I think, the most interesting of the whole race.
Yeah, I think in the middle, the race went a little boring, and then again there was Carlos and Max fight.
Yeah, the safety car got it all equal because you knew that Max is running away with it, but then immediately Carlos could pit behind the safety car. He did get a quick pit stop.
The pit strategies that Carlos had were really good.
Yeah, they were really good. Like Ferrari's master plan finally did work. Not for Charles, but for Carlos. So yeah.
At this point, they need any one of the drivers to work because
I don't think they're winning the constructors at all because of how well Red Bull has done the last 6 races.
Unless Red Bull has like 4 or 5 DNFs.
Yeah, a double DNF that too. Like they need some double DNFs.
Yeah.
It was. So yeah, moving on. Let's see how the race progressed for all our drivers. Yes, me.
I think the best progression is Charles.
Of course.
From P19
that is just beautiful. There's that red line starting from P19 just cascading down. He got stuck behind the Aston Martins for a while, and he didn't want to pit. Nor did the Aston Martins want to pit, and he just kept staying behind. First behind Vettel, then behind Stroll, and then finally he did pit, and then it became easier for him to overtake on the fresher tires.
Yeah.
Like the most consistent one was our race winner, Max Verstappen. He did ended up leading the free practice 1 and 2 and 3. He led every qualifying Q1, Q2, Q3. Got the race win also. Just missed out on the fastest lap. Otherwise, it would have been a perfect weekend for him. But I
I
think
think now he's just
defending.
like trying to make up for the first 2-3 bad races,
Yeah.
and he's like, now I'm back. Now I don't see anyone else winning.
But he's been very consistent. That is how a champion drives.
He's had,
He's not taking the unnecessary
I
risks
think,
taking last year. He's just more calm,
yeah,
more composed. You see here another side of him. He's having fun in the interviews. I love the crack he took at Lewis.
you know, what I've realized is that last year for all these interviews, there was always some grudge against Max
Yeah.
and Lewis. But this time, no matter who wins, after the race, all the like podium drivers are just laughing amongst themselves, which is like really good.
It's been a good but I think as the season goes deeper, we might see more cracks in case if Max doesn't run away with it, which he looks like he is running away with the championship right now. But if Charles comes back into this fight, you might see a different side of it. Who knows? You might think Christian Horner again getting very vocal about things going wrong. So yeah, you never know. So
I
let's see
mean,
where.
Max has had, I think, around 53, 54 races by now, which he's been on top 2 if he's not DNF.
Yeah.
And that's like really good.
That's extremely well done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see how it goes through the rest of the season. Let's see if they do get more bitter.
Yeah.
Seeing how our pit stops were going. Some were really out there pit stop strategies, like Stroll putting in a one stopper, pitting behind the safety car, and then Ricardo doing a two stopper and then losing his time there. Verstappen also doing a two stopper, pitting very early in the first virtual safety car. Similarly, Hamilton also. I think the race deciding
up in the beginning, right?
Yeah. I think one of the race deciding or race ruining pit stops was the McLaren pit stop. Ricardo having an extremely slow pit stop and not trying to get his right front tire in, and then double stacking it with Norris, already making him wait for Ricardo's long pit stop and not having tires at all.
Yeah, I felt so bad for him when, he said in the interview that, what went wrong in your race? He was like, there were no tires, you need tires to drive a car. And I was just like, no.
But he's been very savage. He's been very vocal about the team not doing well, about their team not having more improvements, just being negative about the team.
Yeah.
That's not really negative if he's being very honest about it. But they really ruined his race with that pit stop.
He's just showing how it is, and he can't blame it on anything else at this point because it's the team that needs to improve.
Of course not. That was a really shabby pit stop which cost him the race itself. Not cost him the race, but like I would possibly try to still be in the points, but that really was not what was not ideal what happened. So let's see where the championship stands. Let's see how big a lead Max has. Wow, that's a lead and a half.
Yeah, I think the only reason Leclerc has caught up is because Perez had the DNF.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that would have still
got
been
another 10 points or so, and that would still look like a 30-point lead. So yeah. Lewis Hamilton is coming into his own. Valtteri Bottas too. So Valtteri Bottas is on 46, which is a very high points for Alpha, which is really good. Daniel Ricciardo is missing out of the top 10. Both the Alpines doing really well.
Yeah.
Fernando Alonso breaking into the top 10. Perez getting no points this race, which is going to affect his championship if he was looking forward as to being a very successful, for him to be a successful season. Similarly, Russell also, Mr. Saturday turning into Mr. Sundays, getting his consistent top 5 finish.
Consistent.
So yeah, just fabulous.
He's been consistent on Saturdays as well, so it's Mr. Consistent now.
Mr. Consistent now. Okay, we'll keep it that way. Another interesting stat that we had was how the championship looked after the first 8 races as such. Very obvious emissions are Ricciardo and Gasly and Vettel not being there this year where they were last year, both the Alpines making it in. Ricardo's not had a great year. He had a very mediocre year last year, but it's just got even worse this time. Norris, but the car also hasn't been doing well. Norris was P4 at this point
Yeah,
last year. He's fallen
but
to.
you know, Norris is still performing pretty decently. Again, Ricardo's had more issues than Norris with his car. So that is also one thing that we can blame for him not performing that well.
Another fun stat here is at this point, Russell had 0 points to his name in his F1 career, and now he has 111 at this point. So yeah, we
In
still
one season.
in one season. Yeah, so that is actually pretty commendable. He's been very consistent. It's not been a great car or an easy car to drive, but he's done really well for himself. So let's see how our constructors championship looks like at this point. Oh God, Red Bull is just running away with this. Ferrari did make up some ground because they got both their drivers in the points in the high top 6 points. Red Bull had only Max Verstappen giving him 25, not even the fastest lap point. So Ferrari did well. Mercedes are showing signs of improvement. So if they do actually catch up, they might end up finishing P2. Also, if Ferrari keeps having issues with their engine.
Yeah. That's only if Ferrari has engine issues, because I think if at this point Ferrari continues to be consistent, then Mercedes has no other option than P3.
Yeah, but Mercedes is looking as a good car, and they know what their capacity is. Like another example was just this actually what happened here, where Max and Lewis came out together from the pits, and Lewis went for it and kept holding his position. But as soon as it came to whether they could show their raw speed, Lewis knew there was no match to Red Bull. He knew he had to salvage points for himself, so he just let the Red Bull through. So if they do understand where their limits are and how well they can tackle this, I think they could make a chance for P2 at the end of the season.
Finally, Max has gotten in the top 9 of the most Formula wins, and that's like really good.
Yeah. He'd been asked about this. He was very modest. He said they do have more races a year compared to everybody else, so maybe that's just easier. But it's still a very big achievement.
Even if we are seeing that they are having more races, when you go to see, his consistency has been flawless. So whether it is when you say take the age as the consideration when he's become the youngest, at that time he can blame the amount of races. But right now when we are seeing him in this, when all the drivers are just listed, at that point it's not the races, because he's been consistent for quite some time. And at this point, it's like amazing.
It is actually fantastic. Lewis is on another level. Michael had 91 also in a very dominant car. So I think Horner and Newey and Red Bull are giving him that package where he can actually fight. I think if he stays around for another 10 years, which he easily will, he will take Lewis. Yeah. He will take Lewis out because they are having 22 to 23 races a year, and Lewis obviously didn't have that to start off with. So yeah, I think he can take over. Yeah. Okay. Moving on to our final segment. Now we rank the race drivers on the whole weekend that starts from free practice 1, 2, 3 and qualifying and the race. We rank them out of 10. We'll start from the bottom. Sergio Perez.
3.5, 4.
Yeah, I mean, nothing much. He did screw up his qualifying, but then the race was really very okay. Like the engine gave up, so not really his fault. But yeah, a 3.5, 4. 3.5, 4. Mick had a fantastic qualifying.
Yeah.
Really good qualifying, but then the engine gave up. I think a 7.
Definitely 7.5, because getting P6 in a Haas is something different.
Yeah, I agree.
And he's not come in Q3 as many times as Kevin has. So that plus Haas is just brilliant.
Absolutely.
He had 3.54.
Yeah, I agree. Nothing to show much of. Just 3 points.
Yeah.
Kevin also had a very good qualifying. Messed up his strategy in the race. Messed up with the Ocon and the car going wrong issues and all. I think a 5.5, 6, because it was not really the car's fault, because of which we gave Mick a higher rating. So yeah, 6. Latifi's
Yeah.
18 to 20, like a mediocre race, a 4.5, 5. Lando also a 4.5, 5, because there was nothing he specifically did wrong, but the car was in shambles, so we don't even know how to rank him. He didn't get a good run in qualifying or in the race for us to actually judge his race pace, I thought. Yeah.
Gasly again, he didn't get into Q3, so
Very mediocre.
4,
4.5, 5.
4.5. Yeah. Gasly didn't get into Q3.
Alex Albon, sorry.
But he had Albon decent 3.5.
Got into Q2, so a 5.5, 6 with the Williams.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Vettel had a good FP3, but that doesn't count as such.
Yeah,
So
it doesn't convert to anything.
4.5.
4.5. Daniel had a good qualifying, got to Q3. But a very mediocre race, nothing much to show off there. The car didn't really have pace, so a 5, 5.5.
Yes.
Yeah. Lance also did well in the race, did not doing well in the qualifying. 5.5, 6 again for him. Just getting into the points, just for that. Showed really well.
Brilliant weekend.
Yeah, he out-qualified Bottas.
Good quality, out-qualified his teammate, got into points. So 8.5?
I think so. 8 is, I think that's the highest he could get in an Alpha. Finished P8.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Valtteri also similar, just a point less maybe for getting
no quality.
Yeah. So 7.5, 7.
Alonso had a good quality, but not that good a race.
I think the engine was to be blamed also. So I would still give him a solid 8, I feel.
Yeah. I think 7 for me.
Yeah. Okay. Esteban Ocon, again a 7, like a solid race, a solid 7.5, 8 also maybe. Charles took the engine penalty, got through everybody and got himself up to P5. So I think a solid 8 and 8.5 for a good solid performance. Yeah.
George had a decent quali, messed up
gambled himself in the quali, so like we don't know where to give him points for strategy, but he did do well in the race. So 7.5, 7.5.
Yeah, so 6.5, 7.
Yeah,
I would.
Lewis started P4, ended up on the podium. A solid
8.5, 9.
Solid 8.5, 9. Just because good he was.
Carlos is a 9. He had an amazing weekend. The last 20 laps were just brilliant.
Yeah, but he really just, I don't know. I thought he was waiting for Max to make a mistake, not making the move himself, where I would just like deduct half a point maybe. Like he should have just gone for it, not waited for Max to make a mistake. And you know at this point that Max is not a driver who makes that many mistakes. He's aggressive, but he's very calculated. He doesn't make mistakes. So you can't keep waiting for Max to make mistakes.
Yeah.
So 8.5. I think if you're looking for
Max
a 10 number, this is the 10. Like he didn't put a step wrong. He was.
But one thing, I want to cut a 0.5 for the fastest lap.
I mean, he was defending at that point, and the Ferrari was the quicker car with fresher tires. I know. He was not going to go for the fastest lap. He was obviously going to be more defensive because he knew Carlos was on fresher tires and on the faster car. So
I mean, this would have been the point where Red Bull would have made Perez pit in the end
and get the fastest lap. Yeah, fair enough. So he didn't have Perez to do that for him. So yeah. Okay, that's been us for the Canadian Grand Prix. I
am looking forward to Silverstone. 1 for Jehan Daruwala.
Yeah.
And 2 because last time Silverstone was event.
He's not racing in the race.
Yeah, but FP3 is still.
No, he's not racing in FPs also. He's racing right.
He's racing testing, no?
No, he's racing like pre the whole this thing. He's not anywhere. Okay, like
Yeah, yeah.
sorry.
You can do it, yeah.
So yeah, that's it from us from the Canadian Grand Prix. We're excited for Silverstone next week. Our fellow Indian driver is testing this week for McLaren at Silverstone. Like Mika said, how excited she's about that. And yeah, that's it for us from this week. We will see you next week. Bye bye. Bye, Mika.
Bye.